There was a lot to take away from UFC 298, Alexander Volkanovski versus Ilia Topuria, and I'm going to go through my top 3 takeaways from UFC 298. I'm going to start with some honorable mentions, then I'm going to get into my actual list, going from 3 to 1, 1 being my biggest takeaway from the card, starting off with my first honorable mention. And this kind of isn't really UFC 298, but that is that the UFC 300 main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill, was thrown together last minute. And I understand this isn't really UFC 298 related, but it kind of is because it was announced right after UFC 298. Jamal Hill did an interview at UFC 298 where he discussed how, I just got off for this fight yesterday. I already did an entire video on this. I did a video on Dana White's post-fight press conference talking about it. I will link both those videos down below if you want to check it out for full context. But it's crazy to me. It is absolutely crazy to me that we are 55 days away from the biggest UFC card of all time, and the UFC is fumbling around behind the scenes in the dark trying to find a main event. And they settled on Jamal Hill, a guy who has said, I wouldn't be healthy for 300, coming back from a horrible Achilles injury, who hasn't fought since January of 2023, and now he's getting a title shot against Alex Pereira. It just seems like, and honestly, one thing I haven't mentioned in my other videos, it wouldn't shock me if the main event gets canceled and we're going to end up with Justin Gaethje, Max Holloway, BMF title fight as the main event, which would be an absolute disgrace. But UFC 300, while it's the greatest fight card of all time, it leaves a lot to be desired with the main event. But moving on to my next honorable mention and my last honorable mention, and that is that Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is a legit contender in the middleweight division. Now, I understand he beat Roman Kopylov. Kopylov came in on short notice. And also, Kopylov, I believe, wasn't even ranked. I think Hernandez was ranked number 15. But the way he beat him, was absolutely incredible. He lost the first round. He took some serious damage to the body in the first round. Super competitive first round. But the way he just presses forward, he's like a Merab Dvalishvili with much better BJJ. That's kind of an exaggeration, but you get my point, and I cannot wait to see what he does in the middleweight division. I think the middleweight division is honestly wide open for a lot of these guys, and I think Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is right up there and literally could beat some of the top guys in the division. Right now, Brendan Allen's ranked in the top 10. You don't think Fluffy Hernandez can beat Brendan Allen? And you look at Fluffy Hernandez right now on a 5-fight winning streak. Beat Rodolfo Vieira, submitted him. That's aged quite well. Beat Josh Frem, okay, not the best level of competition. Beat Marc-Andre Barrios, submitted him. Beat Edmund Shabazian, beat him to death with ground and pound. And now he submits Roman Kopylov, who a lot of people were hyped up on Roman Kopylov. Kopylov has amazing striking, looked very good, super well-rounded, and Anthony Hernandez goes out there and puts on a phenomenal performance on a big pay-per-view card. Not only do I think Anthony Hernandez will be a legit contender at 185, I think he could be one of these guys that a lot of fans get behind, and he gets a decent fan base as well. I thought it was a phenomenal performance at UFC 298. I wanted to highlight it in this video. Moving on to my actual list, starting off with number 3, and that is that Merab Dvalishvili absolutely ragdoll Sean O'Malley, and the UFC will do anything to protect him. And also kind of, a two-layer takeaway, Henry Cejudo's career is over. But let's start off with Merab. Merab went out there. He lost the first round, okay. He got outstruck. He got clipped with a big shot. But he's taken down Henry Cejudo. He took Henry Cejudo down, I believe, in every single round. At one point, he picked him up and gave him a spine buster, carried him across the cage and gave him a spine buster. We've seen Petr Yan ragdoll Sean O'Malley, and he wasn't prioritizing any control. Yan would take him down and then look to land shots, and then O'Malley would work back to the feet. Merab, if he can get in close. Now, don't get me wrong. O'Malley could snipe him from the outside. Merab is open to get hit. We saw Henry Cejudo clip him in the first round, but I really, truly believe as long as Merab doesn't get KO'd in the first round, he's got that fight. He's got that fight, and I think the UFC is going to do everything to protect him. I think they're going to try to protect him from Merab. And by the way, throw away Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera. Give Merab his title shot. I think that's such a compelling matchup because you have Sean O'Malley, who's literally a sniper, has nasty accuracy and good power in his hands. And then you got Merab, who has unbelievable cardio and just marches forward and ragdolls guys and spine busters them. And it wouldn't shock me if eventually he gives a Batista bomb like Cody Bumdidge did recently. I want to see that fight. I think that is such a compelling stylistic matchup. And while I believe that Merab wins that fight, Sean O'Malley could easily win that fight. Merab's striking isn't that great. His chin is very hittable, and he did even get kind of stung by Henry Cejudo. He wasn't like rocked horribly, but he got stung by Cejudo, who doesn't really have any power. So if O'Malley catches him right on the chin, he could put him away, just like he did Aljamain Sterling. So that fight is super compelling. That's the fight that needs to get made next. If we don't get Merab in a title fight next, I'm assuming, Sean O'Malley versus Marlon Chito Vera obviously is going to happen at 299. But Merab needs to fight the winner. I believe the winner will most likely be Sean O'Malley. I'm not completely counting out Marlon Vera, but Merab needs to get that title fight. Now, as far as Henry Cejudo, he's done. He's done. He fumbled his career. I mean, Henry Cejudo does not have a win since May 9th, 2020. May 9th, 2020, coming up on 4 years since he's gotten a win. He's now on a 2-fight losing streak, lost a split decision to Aljamain Sterling, and now lost a unanimous decision to Merab. And Merab, outside of the first round, basically dominated him. And Henry Cejudo's 37 years old. Just turned 37. He's done, guys. At the lower weight classes, you cannot get that old and still compete at a high level. So Henry's done. He retired in 2020 as a negotiating tactic. And he messed up. He waited all the way. I mean, he basically waited exactly 3 years to return. He waited 3 years to return. He completely fumbled his career. He thought he had some type of negotiating leverage against the UFC because he was 2-division champion. And it just wasn't the case. And he wasted arguably his prime, 3 years of his prime, or at least 2 years of his prime, not making money, sitting on the sidelines. And now Dana White and the UFC hates him. They didn't even give him an opportunity to retire in the cage. I discussed that in my video where I break down Dana White's post-fight press conference. You can check that out. Link is in the description. But yeah, Henry Cejudo is completely done. Moving on to my number 2 takeaway from UFC 298. And I think a lot of people are going to be upset about this one, but it is what it is. But that is that Ian Machado Garry is the future. I do believe Ian Machado Garry has a very bright future in the welterweight division. I'm not saying, I'm confident he's definitely going to be champion, but I think he has a real ability to go up there and compete with some of the best in the welterweight division. He called out Colby Covington on the microphone afterwards. I think Colby Covington has kind of fumbled his career as well. Dude's been inactive, hiding in witness protection. He's got an undeserved title shot after undeserved title shot. And now basically everyone's jumped ship. Anybody that was fans of Colby Covington has already jumped ship. And I think that's a perfect next fight for Ian Machado Garry because we haven't really seen his wrestling fully tested. It's looked very good, but we haven't seen it fully tested. And I would love to see his wrestling and his cardio tested against Colby Covington. And I think it should be a 5-rounder. But Ian Garry's now 14-0. And, he's had a natural progression. It's not like he's fought all bums. It's not like, he's just beating up bum after bum after bum. Like, he's taken on some decent competition. Like, obviously, Darian Weeks, Gabe Green, Kenan Song aren't the best level of competition. But then he gets into Daniel Rodriguez, which is a decent step up. He beats Daniel Rodriguez, knocks him out. Then he gets a fight against Neil Magny. Neil Magny's a decent step up from Daniel Rodriguez. I believe Neil Magny has a recent win over Daniel Rodriguez, if I'm not mistaken. He maybe even submitted him. Goes out there, literally manhandles Neil Magny, beats the brakes off of him, and now he gets a win over Geoff Neal. Now, I know people, and that's another takeaway, people are over-hating the performance. It was the worst fight on the main card, but it wasn't a bad fight by any means. I mean, Ian Machado Garry looked really good in this fight. Garry was throwing those step-in knees. He was throwing the elbow right behind it. He had good footwork, and he came in with a smart game plan. Why would you sit there and trade in the pocket with Geoff Neal, who has a nasty, powerful left hand? It would make absolutely no sense at all for Garry to try to trade with him in the pocket. And Geoff Neal, all he did was clinch and do nothing with the clinch, and Garry was able to escape the clinch, but it was Geoff Neal who was stalling the fight. But the point I'm making is the future is bright for Ian Machado Garry. I would love to see him against some of these, top guys, Colby Covington, Gilbert Burns, Jack Della Maddalena should be getting up towards that top 10, I think he's already in the top 10, but top 5 very soon. You have Leon Edwards as the champion. You have Kamaru Usman as former champion. You have a lot of potential options. Shavkat Rakhmonov. Apparently, Khamzat Chimaev still has his hat in the welterweight division. There's so many great matchups I would love to see. So once Ian Machado Garry fights Colby, I believe he will absolutely smash Colby Covington afterwards. He's probably going to be in a number 1 contender fight, if not a potential title fight. I look forward to seeing those potential fights. Who knows what the division is going to look like. You have Leon Edwards potentially fighting Bilal Muhammad next. Who knows what the UFC is liable to do. There were some rumors about Khamzat Chimaev. But either way, the point I'm trying to make here is Ian Machado Garry in a division full of killers, I think has a real possibility. If he can continue to win, he will be a massive star in the division. And also, I think he has the ability to beat some of these top guys. I'm not saying I'm confident he'll beat a guy like Shavkat. I'm not saying I'm confident he'll beat a guy like Leon Edwards. But I think that fight is competitive, and I think those are fights he could win. We'll start off with Colby Covington, but after that, I think the future is very bright for Ian Machado Garry. Once he beats up Colby, if he gets like a highlight reel finish, his name value is going to be through the roof. I believe he's already the biggest name in the welterweight division, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what's next for Ian Machado Garry. Moving on to my number one takeaway from UFC 298, and this honestly breaks my heart. This takeaway breaks my heart, and that is that Alexander Volkanovski's career is over. And also, I don't know if a career has been mismanaged at the highest level as badly as Alexander Volkanovski's career has been. And also, we'll add like a third layer to it. Charles Oliveira single-handedly ruined Alexander Volkanovski's career. It's crazy. Alexander Volkanovski has now lost 3 out of his last 4 fights. He's got brutally chinned in his last 2 fights. That is something I never thought I'd say out loud. He's over the age of 35. And I just don't understand who's making these decisions. Fire your manager, fire your coach, fire your friends. He takes a short notice fight against Islam Makhachev on a week's notice. And by the way, I blame the UFC too. I know people say, oh, Joey, you hate on the UFC too much. Why are you putting together a champion versus champion fight? Keep in mind, it already happened the first time, and it was one of the best fights of the year, and it was super competitive. Oh, let's run it back on short notice. Just absolutely disgusting. I would have rather them thrown in Islam Makhachev versus Mateusz Gamrot. Made absolutely no sense. Why are they letting Alexander Volkanovski risk his entire career by doing that? He goes out there, gets brutally head kicked and chin and looked like a bobblehead up against the fence as Islam was pounding him out. Then, if that wasn't a bad enough decision, okay, and end as poorly as possible at UFC 294, horrible decision by everyone involved, disgusting, despicable, then it gets worse. Oh, let's take a 3.5-month turnaround against the most dangerous title challenger at 145. Does it get any stupider? I mean, who's making these decisions? And I know Alexander Volkanovski is very prideful and confident in himself. And he looked decent until he got KO'd, but why are we doing that? Now you've gotten brutally chinned in your last 2 fights. You're over 35 years old. The division's only getting stronger with guys like Movsar Evloev making their way up the ranks. Arnold Allen, who just fought Movsar. Ilia Topuria is now the champ. You still have Max Holloway there. It's just, it's just not a good look for. I think his career's over. It's horrible for Alexander Volkanovski right now. The optics are horrible. And I don't want to see him go on a Tony Ferguson-esque slide. And I talk about it all the time, and I'll say it again. Some people who watch every video or most of the videos are going to get tired of hearing this. We have to appreciate these guys in their special moment in time. I talk about this all the time with different fighters, Adesanya, Volk. I've talked about it kind of the past when I first realized it, kind of with Anderson Silva. We don't appreciate them. And then all of a sudden, like that, it's gone. They're gone. The guy they once were, they're not that guy anymore. And I'm sad to say that's kind of Alexander Volkanovski right now. He's not that guy anymore, guys. And, I just don't know. He's only going to get slower. He needs to take some time off. He's only going to get slower. His chin's only going to get worse. And his skills are only going to diminish after 35 years old. And, I'm not one that believes in curses, but getting chinned badly in your last 2 fights, where's the confidence level going to be at this point? And it's just sad to see. Alexander Volkanovski is one of the GOATs of the sport, but this happens to everyone. Father Time is undefeated. And I think Alexander Volkanovski might be one of those guys that probably sticks around for too long. Imagine he takes another fight, he gets chinned again. Imagine he gets an immediate rematch against Topuria. They book it for 4 or 5 months from now. He gets chinned again. Then what? Then now he's been chinned at 3 out of his last 5 fights. That would be crazy. Lost 4 out of his last 5 fights. That'd be crazy. I mean, how is that even? I wouldn't imagine 1 year ago the perception of Volkanovski compared to now. People thought he was unbeatable. They thought he got robbed against Islam. Look at the perception now. Everyone's saying his career's over. I knew the second he took that head kick against Islam, I knew his career was going to go on a downward slide, but I thought he could get it done against Topuria. But we should have known. And it was the beginning of the end one way or another, because even if he got by Topuria, there's going to be your next killer. And he could prolong that career, but now it's just, where does he go from here? It's sad to see. And also, I'll throw this in there as kind of an extra, kind of bonus takeaway. Max Holloway is currently fumbling his career. He's an idiot. He took the Justin Gaethje BMF title fight. He's moving up to lightweight. Everyone, including me, said, why doesn't he wait and see what happens with Volkanovski versus Topuria? Max Holloway could clearly be in line for a title shot. Now he's fighting Gaethje, who's absolutely going to destroy him and destroy his chin for a fake WWE belt. Meanwhile, he could be fighting in a massive fight against Ilia Topuria for an undisputed featherweight title. So Max Holloway's fumbling his career as well. So it's crazy to see how this sport just chews up and spits out athletes. And I really believe that Volkanovski's done, guys. I mean, what is he going to get a step back? Are they going to give him like Bryce Mitchell next? It's done. Volkanovski's done. You hate to see it. We got to appreciate these guys. I'm not looking forward to watching the slide. I mean, it still breaks my heart what happened with Tony Ferguson. It breaks my heart what happened with Anderson Silva. And the sport, you rarely get out unscathed like a Khabib Nurmagomedov, like a GSP. You rarely get out. You rarely get out with that fairy tale ending like Robbie Lawler, which, you know, even him was kind of on a little bit of a downslope, but got a bum and Nico Price and KO'd him. But yeah, I think Volkanovski's done, and that was my number one takeaway. But the career mismanagement is really what I wanted to harp in on, because horrible career management from his coaches, from his friends, from his manager, from the UFC, and they effectively ended Volkanovski's career. And Charles Oliveira, if he doesn't pull out from UFC 294 with a cut a week out, 2 weeks out, Volkanovski could be a totally different place right now. He could be in a totally different place. So Charles Oliveira single-handedly ruined Alexander Volkanovski's career. Let me know what you guys think of my takeaways down in the comments. If I missed anything that should have been on the list, let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. I appreciate every single one of you. I'll see you in the next video.